Spoilers for Xenoblade 1 and 2. The Fog King. Introduced in Future Connected, this strange being is currently one of Xenoblade's biggest mysteries. The Fog King gets its name not only from its appearance, but also its intangibility. Any attempt to attack or even touch it is impossible, under normal circumstances. In this video, I will cover the main popular theory behind what the Fog King is, where it comes from, and what it means for the future of Xenoblade. I will also be putting forth my own theory as to who the Fog King may be. So, what do we know from Future Connected? In the story, Shulk and Melia encounter a being that the people on the Bionis shoulder have come to call the Fog King. The Fog King resides within Alchemoth, close to where it had emerged from, the Rift. This rift is a large tear in space, located just above the Imperial Villa. The appearance of the rift is a black cloud, with the tear itself a glowing red and orange. So, how come the Fog King doesn't leave Alchemoth and rampage across Shulk's new world? This is because of the Telethia surrounding the floating city. According to Shulk's speculation, the Fog King is made of incredibly concentrated ether. Since the Telethia's main ability is to absorb ether from its surroundings, such as how it would absorb parts of Magna Forest and leave it grey and wilted, it has managed to keep the Fog King at bay, containing the threat. It is also thanks to this theory that Shulk modifies his Monado Replica EX. He adds an additional feature so that he can create an ether field, similar to that of a Telethia's. This ether field seems to work. However, it is ultimately useless as the rift in the sky expands and rejuvenates the Fog King in the process. However, when all seemed hopeless, the Telethia begin to bombard the rift and cause it to close. Now that the rift is closed, Melia deals the final blow and destroys the Fog King. Now, for the main theory behind the Fog King. The basis for this theory lies in knowledge from Xenosaga. You don't need to have played Xenosaga to understand my theory. However, since I will be explaining the origin of the Gnosis, this may seem spoilery if you wish to someday play the Xenosaga games yourself. So just a spoiler warning in case you wish to play Xenosaga completely blind. Otherwise, let's carry on with the theory. In my Eidos Archives video, I point out how Xenoblade is incorporating many more ideas from previous Xeno games. One of the ideas that some believe is being reintroduced through the implementation of the Fog King is that of the Gnosis. Now, I will provide explanations as to what the Gnosis are and how they are similar to the Fog King. So, the main two similarities between the Fog King and the Gnosis are as follows. Both of them have arrived from other realms, and both of them are impossible to make physical contact with, except with the aid of an external ability. In Xenosaga, this is the Hilbert effect.
What? The Hilbert effect!
And in Xenoblade, this is Shulk's new ether field. What do these similarities mean for the Fog King? Well, given that Xenoblade is beginning to draw on more and more ideas from Xenogears and Xenosaga, I'm going to assume that perhaps the origin of the Fog King may also be similar to the origin of the Gnosis. This may not be the case when we find out their actual origin in a future Xenoblade game, but for the purposes of this theory, I am going to assume they are similar. So, what are the Gnosis? And what is their origin? The Gnosis are essentially lost souls. In Xenosaga, there are two main dimensions, called domains. There is the upper domain where Udu exists. I won't be touching on Udu in this theory, so just know it's a godlike existence, an infinite energy, and other things to that effect. What's more important is the second domain, the lower domain. The lower domain is where our world resides. Within the lower domain are another two subdomains. There's the real number domain, which is the realm of the material, so physical matter like our bodies, planets, and so on. And there's the imaginary number domain, which is basically where the realm of the spiritual resides, people's souls. So, the lower domain is split into the material and the immaterial. Throughout a person's life, they will reside within both of these realms. They will live their life in the real number domain, in their body, while also being in the imaginary number domain, through their soul. When a person dies, they then become separated from the material world, existing only as a soul in the imaginary number domain. All of these souls are then absorbed into what is called the collective unconscious. This is how things are meant to be. However, if a person's fear is particularly strong, they may reject the collective unconscious. The more an individual rejects it, the more they transform into a Gnosis. Over time, these Gnosis begin to accumulate within the lower domain, and if the domain were to overflow with Gnosis, it would mean the collapse of the entire lower domain, in turn causing the upper domain to also collapse, and ultimately bring upon the complete destruction of the universe. Now, with the origin of the Gnosis out of the way, this is what I believe may also be the origin of the Fog King. The Fog King is a lost soul. It is broken out of the imaginary number domain, and has manifested itself within the real number domain, causing chaos for the people in Shulk's world. In Xenosaga, the first time the Gnosis show up in large numbers is during an event known as the Miltian Conflict because of the activation of the Zohar. But even before the Miltian Conflict, Gnosis had made occasional appearances here and there. I believe that we have not yet seen Xenoblade's equivalent of the Miltian Conflict. This is simply one of these occasional appearances of the fog creatures. The Fog King may simply be an early indication that the imaginary number domain is beginning to overflow, possibly indicating an imminent collapse of the universe. However, I am not sure how Xenoblade's Miltian conflict would occur, since in Xenosaga it required the presence of the Zohar, but in Xenoblade the conduit has disappeared. Perhaps it wasn't removed entirely, but simply moved elsewhere, or perhaps something or someone brought it back. One other similarity between the Gnosis and the Fog is the ability of possession. In Xenosaga, Gnosis are occasionally shown to inhabit machines. In Xenoblade, the Fog shows the ability to possess animals on the Bionis shoulder. The key linking feature between machinery and animals in these universes is that they do not have minds or souls as humans do. The Gnosis and Fog King, being souls themselves, take advantage of this, as they are only able to inhabit bodies void of them. Lastly is my theory as to who the Fog King might be. Since the Fog King is a lost soul, whose soul is this? One large aspect of the Fog King is that it looks strikingly similar to the Infernal Guldo from Xenoblade 2. The Fog King looking like the Infernal Guldo actually fits into this idea of the Fog King being a Gnosis. It means that this particular soul is one of a person who died as a Guldo, hence why they look this way. To find out who it was that died as this Infernal Guldo, I will be looking at another popular theory. This is the theory that, like Klaus, Galea was torn in half when the conduit was opened. Half of her being became Maineth, and the other half remained on Earth. After the opening of the conduit, all that remained on Earth was its ruins and a few remaining humans. After this event, many of the people there tried using core crystals as a replacement for human brain cells in an effort to become immortal. This experiment unfortunately led them to become incredibly deformed. However, they indeed became immortal with healing abilities similar to that of a blade. I believe Galea may have been one of the people who participated in this experiment. Maybe like how Zanza was the opposite of Klaus's personality after he was torn in two, Maineth was also the opposite to the Galea left on Earth. Where Maineth was kind and put others before herself, what remained of Galea were the darker sides of her personality. She was mortified by what happened to her, and thinking the core crystal experiments could heal her and give her immortality, she gladly took part in the experiments. And during Xenoblade 2, after the party kills the Infernal Guldo, Rex finds something. Rex finds the keycard of Galea.
This is...
Rex? What's matter? Find something?
No. It's nothing.
And so, if this theory is correct, it means that the soul of Galea rejected the collective unconscious in the imaginary number domain, and she re-emerged in Shulk's world, taking on the form she was last seen in, the form of an Infernal Guldo. Technically, this means in Xenoblade 1, Zanza kills Meyneth, in Xenoblade 2, the party kills Galea as a Guldo, and in Future Connected, Melia kills Galea's Gnosis. Therefore, Galea has died 3 times. Well then, that's the theory on the Fog King, and my own theory as to who in particular the Fog King might be. There are many assumptions. The Guldo may not actually be Galea. The main takeaway intended for the keycard scene is simply the revelation that the Guldos are actually people. Galea hasn't even been mentioned or appeared on screen at this point in the game. In addition, the keycards from the Guldo and on Galea's lab coat are identical, though you could explain this being a reuse of assets. The image on the keycard is incredibly blurry, and so it didn't seem necessary to change it for the Guldo scene. What do you think of this theory? And do you have any ideas of your own? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.